Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, haven't shared it too many times, but one of the biggest epiphanies that I've ever had in my life was the first day that I started reading personal development, entrepreneurship, business books. And the day that I started reading those books, that was the day when my life changed. And ever since then, I've never stopped. So I've compiled the top 30 books and also the top 30 success quotes that every man must live by in a simple guide. You can download it for free at kfmfree.com. Again, that's kfmfree.com to really start growing in every aspect of your life. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Alf Herigstad. He is the host of the Being a Better Man podcast and website. Alf, happy to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, Alf, as you know, I was just prepping you a second ago. What kind of success quote do you have or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey? What do you have and what does that mean to you?
I do have one. I say it at least once a day, and I think it many more times. It's simple, 4 words. It's, I am my deeds. And what that means to me is everything I do and say becomes part of me, the good things and the bad things. And keeping that in mind as I go through my day really holds me to a level of 100% accountability for everything I do. And it's really, really helped me out a lot.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And when have you, like you say this to yourself every day.
Mm-hmm.
So have you always been like this? Someone who follows this, or is this something that you've really started developing over time?
The I am my deeds quote probably came into my life about 10 years ago. And prior to that, I was just kind of growing in my father's footsteps, looking at him, just still trying to be a better man. But it all kind of came together one day, and I realized I become everything that I do. I'm the sum total of all my actions. And so that's when I started adopting that.
Yeah, I like that. It's like everything that we do, we are our habits. If we are watching porn all the time, that's going to be our life. Like that's going to be a part of who we are. It's going to affect us. If we're drinking every weekend, then even if it's for social, like that still becomes a part of us. And if we're just watching TV, watching Netflix, things like that, just kind of letting life pass us by, then that's who we are. I'm interested in what are some of these deeds that you have that you follow every day?
When I talk about I am my deeds, that's everything I do. If I'm walking across a parking lot and I see some garbage, I got a choice to make. I can bend down and pick it up, or I can keep on walking. And whatever I do in that instance becomes part of me. So having that in the upper levels of my consciousness affects my behavior on a subconscious level. I just try to make sure everything I do becomes part of me in a good way. And of course, I don't always succeed. I'm just a human being, but having that in my mind really makes a difference.
Yeah. Is this a part of the responsibility of being a man?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it is. Because as a man, we are, I always say a man is 2 things. One, they're an example for everyone else watching you. Someone's always watching you, your children, your neighbors' kids, people at work. And when no one's around, you're watching yourself. So you're an example of manhood to whoever is putting eyes on you in that moment. And the other thing a man is it's a responsibility. So having that level of personal accountability, I am my deeds, really fits into that paradigm well.
What else is the responsibility of being a man? Like, to really go more into this topic here, I think it's really good, especially for this show, as you know.
Yeah, it is knowledge for men.
It is knowledge for men, and we are here with Alf. Let's do it.
The other responsibilities of being a man, there are so many. One of them, I think, is, well, and what I try to get guys to do is try to adopt a mentality of perpetual improvement. I mean, does anyone really ever come to a point where they're like, well, there, I've made it. I'm good enough. I'm as good as I can get as a man. No one's ever going to do that until you die. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to get better. And the second I stop doing that, you know, I'll be on death's door, because what's the purpose of life if I'm not going to always be reaching for something and striving for something? So that's one big responsibility, just to be committed to improving yourself in all ways, mentally, physically, emotionally, intellectually. But as a man, I feel like our other big responsibility, besides the responsibility to ourselves, is to the people that depend on us, to our children, our families. I talk a lot about relationships are our most valuable asset, and I really believe that. All the people, as I go through the world every day, wherever I am, everybody I can see is in my little bubble of protection. I'm the man there, and so I'm going to be responsible for everybody there, even if I don't know them.
What do you feel in that moment? Like you said, you're responsible for other people.
As a man, I think it's a responsibility. Another responsibility is to share my strength, not just my physical strength, but my strength of mind, my strength of character, and to share that and to look for opportunities to help other people with that. If I was in the mall one time and I saw this kid getting jumped by two other kids, so I go over there and I help him. You know, that he was in my bubble of protection, so that was my obligation, I feel.
Without even knowing what's going on. What if that kid is doing something wrong to the other two?
Well, he was down and he wasn't fighting back. At that point, you know, I wasn't interjecting myself. I would just wouldn't let them continue to beat him.
Yeah.
Where I live out in the country, I don't get that many opportunities anymore to see stuff like that. But when I lived in the city, I did. I think, you know, I've walked up to, and I'm not trying to be braggadocious, but
no, go ahead. Yeah.
But I've seen, you know, there was a guy just screaming at his woman and calling her names, and in public, really, really badly. And so I went up and told him, you know, he shouldn't talk to women that way. He said, "She's my wife." I said, "I don't care. You're not going to talk to her like that while I'm around." So, you know, he took her off and he probably yelled at her at home. But the point is, while I'm there in that moment, maybe there's another man watching that, or a child, and they see, wow, yeah, you really shouldn't yell at women like that. That's no good. You know, it's just a lot of little ways that we can impact the world around us. I think a man, one of the greatest things about being a man is that we have the ability to affect change in our environment. We can create the world we want. We're creators. We build things. We invent things. We innovate things. And as we go through our life, we should do that all the time, every day, in some way, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And so for someone who is not asserting themselves into the world, they're not learning. They're not in this, what you call this perpetual state of improvement, physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, in all of those areas. You say they're almost as if they're lining up for death.
Yeah, you're opting out of life. One of my biggest fears is that I'll be an old man on my deathbed and thinking about my life and have some regrets about how I lived. I don't ever want that to happen. To me, that's the worst thing that can happen to a man, is to be lying on your deathbed regretting the life that you lived, the life that you didn't live, more accurately.
What if they're not, so maybe they're not in that perpetual state of improvement, but they're just drowning themselves in some of these things that consume time, such as video games, such as television, such as porn. All of these things are so great. I mean, I can't like I haven't played a video game in a long time, and now it's they're so much better. It's like they've just gotten more addicting. They've gotten the graphics are better. They're just more engaging. And, it's online and porn. It's like every woman you want is available these days in high definition. It's insane. Television shows have budgets bigger than movies these days, and it's like it's so easy to get caught up into this entertainment type of world here. Would you say that even though they're entertaining themselves, that they're still lining up for death?
Yes, I would. And the video game addiction is a big problem with guys. In fact, I'm mentoring a guy through that right now, and my son had a problem with that for a while. And who knows, if I'd have lived in a different time, maybe I would have too. I can't say, but
they're too good. They're too good. They know how to make it so your brain just wants to keep playing. Let's put it that way.
They're scientifically engineered to, activate all the dopamine in your brain, and off you go.
Exactly. And I think same with porn. I think same with movies and television.
Yeah. There's so many time-wasting things. And that's one of my recurring messages to men is most guys who are addicted to video games, for example, they know it's a problem because they're not getting anything done. One of the things a man should do is get things done in his life.
Yeah.
You should be moving forward.
Get shit done. That's
absolutely
going to be the title of this episode. No, it's true. And why do you think people aren't getting shit done? Because it's very true. I was addicted to everything I've just shared. I've been addicted to porn, video games, television shows, like watching, literally being excited to watch a marathon, being excited to say, oh, I'm going to try and complete a season today. Like that, like a Netflix marathon, something like that. I used to be excited. That used to bring me to life. Why do you think men are falling towards this versus getting shit done?
Well, because the world we live in is just too easy. I mean, it's so easy to live now. Our ancestors 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or even 300 years ago, every day they had to get shit done or they would die or their families would die.
I just like how you phrase that. Even just 100 years ago, potentially, even in this country, but in most other countries, absolutely, even just 100 years ago.
Yeah, but now you can lay around in your mom's basement for weeks. She'll bring you ice cream and Oreos and you'll continue to live. No other time in history have humans had it so easy, and that seems good on the surface, but really I think it is a detriment to our species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to have to go get. I can right now just go and get any type of food I want and have it made for me for $10, or I can go to the grocery store and get anything I want. When previously I used to have to run around and hunt and cook.
Yeah, you had to spend days planting and sowing crops and watering them and making sure that they live, because that's your food for the wintertime. I mean, everything was a big deal. Every day was about survival. And that caused us as men to be engaged and active and alive. And yeah, when a guy just sits around in his mom's basement, I mean, you're not living.
And have you seen the movie The Room?
The Room? No, I have not.
Oh, it's like, I recommend it for people. It's Oscar nominated. It's just one of those movies. It's like very low budget, but very good film. But basically, this woman is trapped in a room because this man had kidnapped her, and they ended up having a kid. And so the mom and they're locked in this room, and the kid grew up in the room. And so he's never seen life.
Wow. But
the analogy that I got from that is that most people are actually in the room, but no one is trapping them. They are not out there experiencing. He finally does. I mean, it's already given in the movie, in the trailer, that the boy does escape. And then it's about this boy being able to experience life for the first time. And he looks at the sky, he looks at trees, he looks at people, he even looks at girls, and he gets to really experience life. He's so happy to be outside of the room. But a lot of people could look at it and be like, oh my gosh. And they look at it from the perspective of that type of kidnapping situation, which is, there are situations like that. I do understand. But the way I saw it is very relative to what we're talking about, how everyone has a room. Like you could be in a bad relationship and that could be your room where it's you're suffering and you're not able to experience life, or you're playing
I've
video
been in
games.
that room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been in that room.
All right, let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, my problem, it's not really a problem. My parents were perfect. I mean, I had great, fantastic parents, but they made it look too easy. And so when I grew up, I just thought all I had to do was marry the first gal I found and everything would be blissful.
Why'd you marry her?
Because, believe it or not, I was in a big hurry to have children. Because my childhood was so great.
Yeah.
I decided at the age of 5, I can't wait to provide this for another kid. And so I was really geared up to have kids. I was in the Army at the time.
Okay.
And so I'm like, let's get married and have kids, start a family. That's what I've been working towards my whole life. But it didn't work out. Come to find out.
What's the age here when you
I was 19.
Okay, yeah, very young.
Yeah, so come to find out, you actually should love the person that you marry.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Guys, write that one down.
Weird, right?
That's crazy.
You should actually get to know her. You should know her longer than 2 weeks before you propose. Yeah, I was a crazy, impetuous youth.
How long did it last?
Well, we were together actually for 10 years because then I had 3 kids, and I was in hell. I mean, I almost completely lost my own identity because, well, for lots of reasons within the relationship, but she came from a really yelling, violent home life. And so I spent all my time just trying to make things as good as I could for my kids. And eventually I escaped and
the room.
And yeah, I escaped the room and life was good. My mom saw me the next day after I escaped and she said, "Alf, you look so different." And what it was, I was smiling. She hadn't seen me smile in over a year.
Wow.
And then I went on to get custody of my children, and life was good, and I learned a lot of fantastic lessons.
Hell yeah. Let's go into those lessons.
Oh, well, I learned a lot about what I don't want in a woman. And in the process, I had matured a lot and grew up. I'd had a few construction companies, and I was, legitimately a grown man on my own, but that marriage was really a crash course in human behavior for me and knowing what I can tolerate and what I can't tolerate. You have to know these things. And I went on, and I did have a couple other not so great relationships after that, but it all led up to me being able to identify my wife when I met her, my current wife, because if I had met her 20 years ago, I would not have been educated enough about myself yet to even recognize that this is the one. But because I'd gone through all that, now I am in bliss in my relationship.
So you knew what you wanted when you saw it.
Yeah.
Second time around.
Yeah, it was really quite amazing because at the time I had sworn off relationships for good. I was going to die a bachelor and I was happy about it. And then I met her, and within 15 seconds, it's like I was changing on a molecular level, and I'm like, what's going on?
Oh, shit.
Wow, she's the one. 3 days later, I've talked to her every day since then. That was like going on 4 years, but.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But and she thinks the same thing. If we had met 10, 15, 20 years earlier at that stage in our personal development, we probably would have walked right by or not recognized.
Yeah, not even blinked at the.
Yeah, not recognized the treasure that was right there in front of us and how compatible we were. So, some guys luck out and get it right on the first time, but it's not too common.
It's very rare. Very rare.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if you needed to get out of that room in order for you to, I almost want to say, like, get back into life and discover something that would completely rock your world.
Yes, that's exactly true. And after I got out of that room, I stayed out of that room for 10 years as a single by choice person, just dating and doing my thing. And it was really awesome because I could do whatever I wanted. I had all these projects going, and I was a pretty happy single guy. And then I got involved with the relationship right before I met my wife. And it was like the universe was just slapping me upside the head saying, hey, remember this? Remember? Because I was in it again. Somehow I'd fallen into that sort of room one more time. But then I was saved because I was a contestant on a reality show in Norway. So I left, went to Norway, and completely rebooted back to myself, and came back, broke up, just changed my life.
Yeah. Wow. Is that where you're from? Like, is that kind of
that's where my family's from.
Yeah. Your last name's Herigstad. I'm like, this sounds like I'm interviewing a Viking.
Yeah.
It's awesome. All right. So how did you know that you needed to divorce or get out of the room? Because I think a lot of guys are in that room listening to this, and they're like, how do I know if I'm in the room?
Well, I had known for some time during my marriage. The only thing that kept me in that room at the time was the threats over my head that she would take my children back to Texas and I would never see them again. And I was very close to my children, and I knew that without me, they wouldn't have a prayer. So I was kind of hanging in there for them, looking for an opportunity to leave. And it's a good sign that you need to get divorced if you think about faking your own death.
You said that with so much confidence.
Well, it's true. I considered faking my own death, but
what are some other things like that? Like, it's a good sign that you need to get out if you're thinking about leaving the country.
if you would rather just stay at work forever than before coming home, or like if you have to get psyched up to come home, that's not good.
Or if when you leave the house you feel like you left the room.
Yeah,
you're going back into it voluntarily.
Yeah, you're so happy to leave the house in the morning and go to work. You can't wait to go to work. Yeah, those are all bad signs.
Yeah. And I laugh out of, I've kind of been in similar situations, not laughing at someone who could be going through that, but just the reality is if we're thinking about leaving, then likely that's a big sign.
Yeah, it's true. And that's exactly it. If the thought crosses your mind, wow, this really sucks, I should get out of here.
Yeah.
Then you should do exactly that, because you're not being the best you can for yourself or her or anybody.
Yeah.
And there's a potential that if you do divorce, then maybe each of you will have an opportunity to actually meet the person that was designed for you.
Yeah. It's almost beneficial for both parties, because if you're not happy, then she's not going to be happy just regardless. Not even the fact that you're not meant for each other, just because you're not happy. So did you ever have these kind of questions? You said within 15 seconds, I knew this. This was the girl. This is the girl you're currently married. Did you ever have any thoughts of, I should fake my death? Or,
no, not one time. In fact, I'm still so thankful every day. I look forward to coming home. That's a good sign.
Yeah. Excited to see what's on the other side of that door.
Yeah, if something happens at work and I get to leave a little early, I'm thrilled. It's like I won the lottery. I get more time with that person today.
Wow. So exactly. Great points on this right here. Something else that, we were alluding to it earlier, which was how life is easy. And I think that's a great point. Life is easy here. Not easy, easier than it has ever been in the world, in history.
Yes, ever in history.
Ever in history. I read, which book is it? I read that a common middle-class person today lives a better life than the richest monarch 100 years ago.
I totally believe that. Yeah, if we went back in time 500 years and told people what it was going to be like 500 years from now, they would not believe us at all.
You would get hung for being like a martyr or something.
Yeah,
you'd be hung like
tried
witchcraft.
For heresy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But here where I live, I grew up on a farm, and I'm continuing that tradition because it really ties me to the land. It grounds me. I have my own animals. When I eat meat, I know their names, and I like that. Humans have lost connection to the food they eat. They don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. You go buy a burger, you don't know you don't even know if it's real meat.
Right. Or what state of terror or fear that animal was in when they were killed. And at least my animals, I know that they lived a happy life. I think that translates through the food, and the same with the crops we raise and stuff.
Wow. Okay. What's your take on rite of passages?
Oh, man. That's right up my alley.
Yeah.
That's right up my alley there. In fact, I did a whole episode on rites of passage. I'm going to do another one, but they are critical for men. Critical. In fact, there's a young boy in our community. He's 15, and we're developing a rite of passage for him now because it's so, I mean, nowadays, what's happening is young boys are just drifting into adulthood. There's no delineation. I've met 22-year-olds who don't really know if they're a man yet because nothing has ever happened in their life. They've never been challenged. They've never faced death. I mean, nothing has ever happened in their life to make them feel like a man. And I think that's one of the functions of a rite of passage. The best rites of passage are where you're alone and afraid and you get through it. Because then you come out the other side and you're like, that kind of was hard, but I did it. What else can I do?
What could be some form of rite of passages for men?
I've known some families that when the boys got a certain age, the dad would take them out into the wilderness on a hunting trip or a fishing trip and just spend time regarding that boy as a man and treating him like a man and away from the apron strings. Not that there's anything wrong with mothers or anything, of course, but in all indigenous cultures, that's what they do. They go and they be with the men and they learn from the men and they are regarded as a man. And there's an announcement made, this guy's now a man. And with that announcement comes a certain level of accountability and responsibility that the subject feels. Like, I didn't have a specific rite of passage. I kind of invented my own in a way because I became a boxer when I was a kid. And for me, that was a sort of a rite of passage every time I got into the ring alone. It's just me. I don't have anyone else to rely on, only myself. And those are like little mini rites of passages.
Yeah. That's something that I wanted to bring up, was that we may have gone on a rite of passage, but didn't really call it that. Like me training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was one, or overcoming a breakup. I felt like after my last serious breakup, after that was when I fully became Andrew Farabee. That was when I really started going after what I wanted in life, and just that was a big part of how I started Knowledge for Men. Was just like, I quit my job, I started Knowledge for Men, I moved away, I started reading books, started traveling I was just doing everything for me, and that was a massive transformational experience. And I view that as a rite of passage, but I didn't call it that when I was in it.
Right. But now in retrospect, you can identify it as such.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for some guys, leaving home and going 3 states away to college is kind of a rite of passage, or anything.
What did you call it? Alone, scared, and afraid? What were the 3 words you said?
Yeah. Alone, scared, or alone and afraid, basically.
Alone and afraid.
Yeah. I think it's the best rites of passage. You leave your cell phone at home and you're out in wilderness somewhere alone and afraid. And I think that's one of the best things you can do for yourself.
Do you think that men can have different stages of rite of passages? Like there's an initial one towards the late teens, then you have another, like you continue advancing into a higher level of manhood, I would say almost every decade.
Yes, absolutely. And there's different stages of a man's life.
Right.
You're like I forgot the word, but like, then you're like a prince and a king and an elder.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's something before prince. I forgot the
Warrior?
name. What's that? A squire, maybe. I don't know, something like that. But,
okay.
But there's all these different stages of a man's life. Like now I'm in the elder stage now. I'm I went through my king stage. Now I'm a respected elder in my community. I give advice. People come to me. I'm that guy. But I can look back in my life and see all the different stages, and different things happen. Like you said, especially if a guy's looking. If you allow yourself to be sucked into the world of media and porn and all that stuff, you might miss out on your rite of passages.
Yeah. There's definitely no rite of passage on. If it has an LCD screen, it might not be a rite of passage. Television, correct. Video games, porn. What would you say are some common myths of manhood?
Common myths of manhood: that men don't cry, that men aren't as good of parents as females. I'm really big on that one.
Why is that?
Well, because I got custody of my children, and I was a better parent than their mother. And it took me, even after she kicked them out of the house when they were little, right after we got divorced, and told them she never wanted to see them again, it still took me a year battling in court to get full custody of those kids. Because I'm a man, I have testicles, therefore I must not be a great dad, a great parent. It just infuriates me. When any single parent, whether you're a woman or a man, you have to be big enough to fulfill the role of that other parent. I had to be their mom sometimes. I had to be compassionate and nurturing at times in order to make them well-rounded people. But there's a myth that men don't have that capacity, and it's incorrect.
It's very incorrect. I think it could be challenging. The era, this time that we live in, I think it can be challenging, but it is incorrect. Absolutely. Men have absolute capacity to do that and still be a strong man.
Yes. I had a lot of challenges as a single dad because I had a son and 2 daughters, and when they became teenagers, there were lots of things going on I didn't have a clue about.
Right, the daughters,
Yeah, my daughter would just start crying and run upstairs, slam the door, and I look at my son, I'm like, what happened? He's like, I don't know. Just emotional stuff like that going on that as a man I had to learn about.
You're laughing because this probably sounds like some tough stuff there.
Yeah, there were some pretty funny stories. If I told them all, my daughter would probably disown me. But
yeah,
I'll just suffice it to say that.
All right, we'll get it.
Being a single dad of daughters, it's challenging, but as a man, and that's what I tell guys, look, if there's something you don't know, if you encounter something that's hard, that's your opportunity to be a better man. Go look it up, learn it, read a book, Google it, whatever you got to do, but learn what you need to know and then go do it.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Responsibility.
Really. Yeah.
It's like, what would you do if there was no one to ask? You would figure it out. If there was no, because we could live in that state of resistance of like, I can't get a hold of this person. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what should I do here? I'm just not sure the right step here. What if I'm wrong? And we start second guessing ourselves. And like, what would you do if there's no one in the world to ask? You would have to figure it out.
Yeah, I've encountered that many times in different things, and you just do it anyway. And then through trial and error, you learn how to do it. Or if you have resources available that you can study and learn, great. But if not, you just have to try it. It's better to try and fail and then know how to try better than to just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah. I'm laughing because last night I was building, you buy a desk online and it looks great. And then when you get it, it's like in a box the size of a lunchbox. You're like, what am I doing here? And then I open it up and I can't figure out the directions. And I'm almost about to give up and just go to Craigslist and be like, hey, I need help with this. And I'll just wait till the week or, until someone can come out and do this for me. And so instead I just started building it. Like I just started looking at it and I'm like, this should go here. This should go here. And I just built it without the instructions. Although some of it was like backwards, I built it and then I was like, oh, it's backwards. And so I'm like, damn it. And so I just had to undo it and then, turn some things around. And I figured it out just by looking at the picture. Like just the first picture shows a picture of a desk. And I'm like, I'm just going to build it. And then I had to figure it out and I made a lot of mistakes, but I built it and it's done. The desk is 100% working, and I had no leftover parts, which was amazing.
Awesome. See, that's the great thing about being a human, because we have that ability. We have that ability of creation, and dolphins can't do it. Neither can whales or chimps, or we're the only ones. We know we can do that. We can look at something. I do that all the time when I build things. I build it in my mind first, and then I just go build it. It's great to be human.
I was saying too that like I made a ton of mistakes, and it took longer than, let's say, if I probably was to hire someone. And, you know, from an entrepreneurial perspective, this probably isn't the best example here, because just the whole e-myth idea. But in terms of being a man, I was able to solve it, and it's done. Instead of just letting it sit there and complain, and there's like there's a problem, you know, there's like a problem here, and I'm just going to walk by it and like, oh, I couldn't figure it out. It's done. And I started.
If you encounter anything like that, similar to that in the future, you'll have more capacity with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a small example, but I think if we live in that way, then when it comes to a big situation, exactly what you said, we just don't have the capacity to solve that problem because we have a history of not solving our own problems.
Yeah,
little problems.
That's why I encourage men to choose the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
If there's two paths you can take to something, sometimes just do the hard way. You learn a lot more on that path.
All these examples of yesterday. The elevator was broken at this grocery store. It's like a garage that you have to go down. And so everyone was waiting for this elevator to work. And there's like 10 people now waiting. And there's stairs right there. It says stairs, like right next to the elevator. And I'm just like, okay, well, I just grab my bags and do the hard thing, which is to hold all your bags and walk down the stairs. And while I was done, you know, with all loading up all my groceries, driving away, and that elevator never opened on the bottom floor. Like they're still up there. It's like done deal.
Yep.
Do the hard thing.
Yeah, I was a construction contractor for several years. And it gave me such great respect for my great-grandfather because he was a carpenter who built houses before there were power tools. So there I am with my skill saw, you know, ripping a sheet of plywood or a 2x4. I'm like, wow, they had to do this with a handsaw. Unbelievable. I mean, but houses were built all the time.
Yeah.
People built stuff without power tools. And it's just, as a builder, it just gave me a lot of respect for those guys.
Yeah, yeah. And nail guns and all that.
Yeah, nail guns.
Yeah, you just have to do that. What would you say are some of the best and then worst parts about being a man?
For me, the best part of being a man is my children are grown now.
Okay.
And I can see myself in them. So while I was raising them and I'm telling them stuff and trying to teach them and whatnot, and I would get depressed sometimes because it seems like everything I'm saying is just bouncing right off of their forehead. But I just kept at it. And I was consistent. And when they grew up, now I see them saying the same stuff to their kids. And I'm like, yes, they heard it. They heard me. There's part of me in there, and I'm immortal now. And so to me, that's one of the best parts of being a man, and is the immortality that comes, that kind of immortality. The worst part of being a man, you know, I've never really thought about that because I really love being a man.
Maybe worse, you know, isn't the right word, but we could use like toughest or most challenging parts of being a man. I think that's the correct language, because worst part about being a man, it's like,
well, I think maybe the hardest thing about being a man is, especially if you have a family, if you have people who depend on you, that is a big responsibility. And it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. And I mean, I remember when my kids were little, there I am, a single guy, just struggling, trying to keep it all together, keep house too. And it was hard. And I'm just like, man, it would be so easy if I was just by myself. But that's my job. That's my obligation as a man, as their dad, and then as a man in my family. I mean, I have obligations that way. There's responsibilities that come with being a man. And I guess that's the hardest thing. I'm not complaining about them. It's just,
right.
It's not always rainbows and butterflies.
Right. And would you say that when you have that type of weight, it's like there's people depending on you, like you have to do the job, you have to own this responsibility, that did it ever suppress the lover side of the male archetype?
The lover side?
Such as the compassionate, the vulnerable, the loving, the intimate.
I mean, at times, yes. There were times when I was under certain amounts of pressure to where when I came home, I probably wasn't the nicest person to be around, but I would have to check myself. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I'm acting grumpy. I just had a hard day. And I think it's really important for men to remember to do that because, I mean, it's like when you're with a woman and she is PMSing really bad and you're like, what's her problem? But then when you realize, oh, she's PMSing, it's okay. That's just what they do. I mean, it allows.
Yeah, it's right.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I can overlook this for another couple of days. But so it's important for us when we get to that state to communicate to the people around us and say, look, I might be a jerk for the next few hours. I'm sorry in advance. Just, I'm having a hard time. But a lot of guys, they don't remember to communicate that stuff, and then they're just jerks.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The best part, your message, your wisdom, it's like by you being in that perpetual state of improvement, like that actually is not just about you. That actually goes down to the people that you love. And when you get to see that, that's an awesome, that's just like a feeling you want to have when your time comes. And then the toughest part can be that weight. Absolutely. I think a lot of men can resonate with that. And even if someone isn't in a family or they don't have a family, rather, and they're single, there's also this weight, especially in the last, I would say, 5 years, that is all about crushing it.
Yeah.
Like just fucking crush it. Like be successful. And there's this weight that you have to be successful, financially, all this here. And I really think social media has given birth to this idea, or it's at least made it more popular, and it adds weight to a lot of young and kind of men in their warrior years, and then potentially men in their later years feeling like, did I do the best I could have?
Yeah, I might have missed a boat there.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm an advocate for the whole crush it mentality. I think that's good and healthy as long as a guy doesn't lose sight of the things that are really important. Because what good would it be if you crush it for 20 years?
Yeah.
And now you're 50 and you don't have any really solid relationships. I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, but
friends and even with your own family.
Yes. And that's where the real value of life is in your relationships. I mean, it's great if you can go out there and crush it and make a ton of money and be that guy for your family and friends too. But don't forget to be a human being along the way and enjoy living, being alive.
Yeah. That's a part of that lover side too. What kind of questions could someone ask themselves who's listening to this about what's most important to them? Because I ask this because I think a lot of people think what's most important to them it's what's been given to them, like kind of what they're hearing, what they're seeing, but they haven't really internally checked in and asked themselves what's important to me.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And that's something I tell guys to do is you need to try and be objective. And it's not easy all the time because we have all this input from other sources, but you just need to go. I like to use a mirror. I look right in the mirror at myself as though I'm looking at another guy, and I decide what kind of man I want to be, what that looks like. I visualize it. There was a time when I was working 18 hours a day, just trying to be successful, like you're talking about. And real quickly, thankfully, I saw that I'm neglecting my other responsibilities. I'm not being the dad I want to be. I'm not being the man I want to be in general. I'm just being a guy who does nothing but work. To answer your question, I think you really need to just look at yourself and try to be objective and first decide what kind of man you want to be. What does that look like? What kind of man will I be in 10 years? And what will that look like? What kind of reputation will I have? How will people talk about me when I'm not there? All these little things help you decide what kind of man you want to be, and then you can decide how to become that kind of man.
Mm.
But you got to make a decision first. What kind of man do you want to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I think guys listening, that's an exercise right there. You know, going out. I think following what Alf really likes to do here is go out into the wild alone with no internet or no electronic devices. Bring a journal and a pen. What kind of man do I want to be?
Yeah.
And wrestle with that. The other day, I had a cousin that came into town, and I hadn't seen her in maybe 10 years, and she wanted to go to dinner. And my family had went to dinner, and I was so wrapped up in my work. Things are growing. It's amazing. I'm fortunate to be in this position, grateful to be in this position, but I missed that dinner. And it made me feel like really, it really hurt me on a lot of different levels. Like, of course, I didn't see the cousin. Of course, I didn't see the family, but also on the level too, that the reason why I pursue entrepreneurship and want to get into business is so that I can have freedom.
Yeah.
And that's not freedom. If you can't see, to me, that's not freedom. If you can't make a dinner with someone that came and wanted to sit down with you and catch up, like, that's not freedom. And that really hurt me and really made me kind of reevaluate what's going on here.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like when I said I was working 18 hours a day, that was my own company. I mean, I was the boss. And
yeah.
And so really what had I done? In the pursuit of freedom, I had just created another job for myself, and I'd become my own slave.
Yeah, you built yourself a nice room.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really interesting topic. This whole conversation has been incredibly powerful. I think the guys listening are just absolutely enjoying this episode here. I do want to get into the knowledge round. I just want to check in though, and want to respect your time. How are you doing on time?
I'm good to go.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to ask you just a few more rapid fire questions here, get a few more nuggets of wisdom out. So are you ready for the knowledge round, Alf?
Yeah, fire away.
Awesome. If you want to grow to the highest levels that you've ever been at in your life, go to kfmfree.com and you can download the top 30 books and success quotes that every man must live by. Every guy should read. If you want to grow, if you want to achieve greatness in life, you're going to have to read and surround yourself with the greatest minds of the world. So I've done all of the hard work for you. I've read hundreds of books. I've listened to hundreds of audiobooks. I've gone through and found the best quotes that you'll need to succeed and thrive and grow and become the man that you want to be. So go to kfmfree.com and I'll send it to you right now. kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling really unsure of their purpose, what they should be doing?
Well, because we all go through that at one time or another. And what's my purpose? What am I doing here? Am I doing the right thing? One test that I've found helpful is what will ignite me inside? What is what I'm doing now? Does it make me happy? Do I look forward to doing it? I mean, because look, what's the use of living? What's the use of being alive if there's not a little bit of happiness? So, I mean, again, you just have to be real objective and honest with yourself. And it's not always that easy because we're influenced by what our parents think, what our neighbors think, and our friends think. But what do you think? That's what you really got to get down where the rubber meets the road and have a talk with yourself and decide what you like and what you want. And then pursue that regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a big point right there, is to pursue that regardless of what anyone else thinks. I think anyone who's going to try something, it's like all the heads pop up as soon as, all the opinions do pop up, and it can really prevent someone from pursuing something that would have really made them happy.
I'm kind of known for that, I guess. Like in the 70s when everybody had long hair, I had all mine cut off because I didn't want to be like anybody else. everybody was listening to hair bands and I'm listening to like Hank Williams. I just always did the opposite of what everybody else did, which made me kind of a weirdo, but I was a happy weirdo and I was operating under my own power. And that, I think, has done so much for me in the long run.
Yeah. Mark Twain has that quote, whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect.
Yeah, very true. And I've started things. I started an ostrich farm. I raised ostriches, had a boxing gym eventually. I mean, I've done all kinds of stuff just because I wanted to, and against the advice of other people telling me, well, what's your business plan? What's this? What's that? How much money you got in the bank? I said, I don't care. This is what I want to do. And I did it. And I'm glad.
Yeah. I feel like all those questions are it's just like adding layers of resistance to actually doing just the real thing that you want to do.
Yeah, there are people giving you opportunities to make excuses not to do something. And I don't believe in excuses at all. No excuse is valid, ever.
Yeah, I like that. What would you say was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
What was holding me back was probably the biggest thing holding me back was just bad choices I made with relationships in my past, because once I would get in it, then I couldn't just get out like an asshole. I had to get out still being the best man I could and being true to my word. And sometimes that takes a lot of time, and it held me back. But that's really not a great answer to that question.
Well, let me give it to you this way. Okay, so let's do a scenario here where you have 60 seconds to talk to your 25-year-old self, 25-year-old Alf, if you can envision where he's at personally, professionally, this stuff here. What would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
Okay, 25-year-old Alf.
Yeah.
Pay attention. You need to get divorced immediately.
Holy shit.
Immediately. Divorce her. But before you divorce her, send her to Texas on a trip and then take possession of your children and never be apart from them ever, because they need you. And that's the biggest advice I would give my 25-year-old self.
What did you tell him not to do?
I would tell him, honestly, I would tell him, don't start dating that other girl that you're thinking about. Don't do that either. You need to be by yourself and get to know yourself again, because you've been monopolized for all these years by someone else. You need to rediscover who you are and then move forward.
So after the divorce, you would say to yourself, remain single for self-discovery.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Like, don't rush into that relationship.
Yeah. Don't get involved in anything. You have to rediscover who you are.
Yeah.
Because that's one big problem with men. So many men don't really know their self. They think they do. They think, well, if this happens, I'll do this. But then that happens and they do something totally opposite because they don't know their self. And it takes time and effort to get to know yourself.
What kind of effort? Like, what could someone do to really get to know themselves?
Yeah, you have to, for one, think about it every day. You can't, it's like losing weight. You can't decide on January 1st, I'm going to lose 40 pounds and then don't think about it again. You have to think about it every single day and work at it every day. And it's the same with knowing yourself. An exercise I always did, I ran myself through the thousands of different scenarios and visualizations and really deciding, because I want to know. I don't want to be surprised by how I act. So I put myself in situations and really come to grips with how I'll act in this scenario or that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I get it. Yeah. What would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books that have helped you become a better man?
Well, the first big book that really impacted my life was a biography of Rocky Marciano. What I loved about that book and what inspired me was he wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the strongest guy. He was only 5'10", but he was a heavyweight and he only weighed 185 pounds. But he's the only undefeated heavyweight champion ever. Wow. And why is that? Because he would find out what his opponents are doing. If they're training 20 rounds, he'd train 30. If they're running 15 miles, he'd run 25. He worked harder than them because that's what it meant to him. He wasn't the best boxer. He was the hardest working boxer. So that book really impacted me because it's a way of approaching life. I have so many metaphors about boxing as they relate to life.
What's one of those big metaphors? You can't give us a teaser like that.
Oh, okay. Like it when something bad happens to you, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like getting knocked down in the ring. It doesn't matter if you get knocked down. What matters is what you do in the next couple seconds after that. I mean, you can stay on the canvas. You can wait till the 9 count and try to get up. Or, that's when you find out in those moments who you are and what you're made of. When something bad happens to you, when something becomes hard, that's when you get to know yourself. And that's why so many men don't know themselves now, because everything is so easy. We don't have an opportunity naturally to go out every day hunting for food and almost get killed, because those kinds of things let you know what kind of man you are, what kind of person you are. And if you see a deficit, now you can make an improvement. But if you don't see the deficit, how are you going to improve what you don't know is there?
Yeah. It's almost as if today in this day and age, like we purposely and intentionally have to make life hard on ourselves.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that's why I said sometimes choose the hard path, do the hard thing, because those are opportunities to get to know who you are better.
Yeah. I like little things during the day. Like I've been taking cold showers for the last 2 years. For the first year, I was still every day scared. Now it's actually very refreshing. I've come to really I look forward to it now. And that's actually the first time I've said that. And it's just crazy because I look forward to it all the time now. Also, it's summer here in San Diego, so that makes it easier now. But every morning, I'm doing that cold shower, and it's just why do it? You don't have to. I could easily have a steaming hot shower and make it enjoyable. But the ice cold shower is overcoming a little challenge in the beginning of my day.
That's a really good example of what we're talking about.
And it really starts you on that path. But yeah, you got to almost make life hard.
Yeah, especially now, because there's so many guys that have it so easy. They don't know how easy they have it. And the only way to find out is to put yourself through something. And in fact, I'm trying to develop a course for like guys in their 20s and 30s that have never had any sort of rite of passage. Hey, sit down and design your own and then execute it.
Yeah.
Make a rite of passage.
Quit that job.
Yeah.
I quit my job. Or break up if it's a bad relationship. And we already talked about this, but if you're asking yourself those questions, a breakup is, for me, honestly, even talking to you, it's like, for me, some of the wisest and strongest men I've known have gone through crazy divorce or some sort of serious breakup that was like a life-altering experience. And then, I'm talking to them years after, and then it's like they're just so grounded. Some of the most grounded men I know have either been through a divorce and or have traveled the world extensively.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment entirely. And also about breaking up and divorcing and stuff, it's the tendency in our society for some reason to try to save marriages that are fallen apart and have no business being a marriage. And that can go on for years, 10 years, 15 years of trying to fix something that's obviously broken. What a waste of time, in my opinion.
No, great opinion. I support it. Okay, so I've gotten so much value from this episode here, and I feel like that is almost the philosophy. What would you say is your philosophy on life? I was going to say it's like pursuing going down that scary route, but what would you say is your philosophy on life, on being a strong man?
My theory on life in a nutshell, and I stole this from somebody, I don't remember who, but if you're listening and I stole it from you, I'm sorry, but the things we focus on expand.
Okay.
And that applies to good things and bad things. If you feel like you're a victim somehow and you're focusing on your victimhood, you're going to continue to be a victim. For example, if you're overweight and you're focusing on how overweight you are and how fat you are, you're going to remain fat. Everything that we focus on becomes a priority, and it's like magic. The things we focus on take shape. Like like my podcast, like your podcast. I'm sure when you started it, you were focused on it like a laser beam, and it came to life and it happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I mean. So if you see something that you want and you want to change it, focus on that thing and it will happen. If you're really focused on it, it's like magic. It happens.
All right. Well, that's going to conclude the knowledge round there. And so what's exciting you now today? Like, what's really getting you out of bed in the morning?
What's getting me out of bed in the morning? I'm pretty stoked about my podcast. It's coming along nicely. I'm starting to get some traction, a lot of good feedback. So that's exciting because I know it's making a difference to people. And that's really awesome. Let's see what else. Everything's going good. My farm's going great. Everything right now is awesome.
Yeah.
And
I think it's great that you live on the farm. I can just picture all this stuff. I mean, you're out there in the wild. Right? Like, how close is your nearest neighbor?
Well, I have the privilege to live on my ancestral land here where I grew up. So on this street, there's my dad and then my sister and then my house and then my brothers on the other side of me.
Wow. So
and
you guys have dinners and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're able to get together and luckily I don't have the kind of family that's always, coming over unannounced and stuff like that. So we respect each other. But at the same time, when I get done talking with you, I'll probably take a stroll down and have a beer with my dad, and then they'll go out and check on the sheep. But this is a life that I created it. I created this life for myself because this was what I wanted. I focused on it. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of guys. And when I was a young guy in the Army, for example, I felt so disconnected with my life because I'm always moving. Everywhere I stayed wasn't really mine. And I know there's a lot of guys, living in an apartment in the city. They're like, well, that's great for you, Alf, but here I am stuck in this apartment. But I wasn't always here. I had to arrive here. So there's a journey involved, but you got to focus on that journey and be committed to it. And it'll happen for everybody if you want it to.
Yeah.
If you make it happen.
Boom. Alf Herigstad dropping knowledge, giving us the lowdown here. This has been a fantastic episode. I've learned a ton. I know my audience is they're taking massive notes, having a good time here on the show. Alf, for all the guys listening, you can follow up with Alf if you go to beingabettermanpodcast.com. Also, simply just Google Alf Herigstad and it pops right up. And yeah, this has been a great episode here. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, and also giving extra time here for this episode. I think it's absolutely worth it. And thank you for all the listeners here and putting in an hour plus on your own personal development.
Have we been talking that long? Wow.
Yeah.
It just sailed by. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you to your audience for listening in.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.